Don't make me laugh. Don't make me laugh. Don't do this to me, Elisa. Hello, I'm Tara Brabazon. I'm the Dean of Graduate Research at Flinders University, and welcome to vlog 297, Research with a Passion. Now, these days, a lot of research is plug in and play. And what I mean by that is a funder or an industry partner has a problem that they need to solve, and a researcher solves that problem for them. And that's great. And that's important. And in many ways, that's probably the future of higher education research. But it wasn't always thus. 20 years ago, a large group of our students used to come to our university with their project, with their passion, with their agenda, with something they really wanted to investigate, something that mattered to them personally and professionally and politically. These sort of projects now are pretty rare, but I have one for you that we're going to talk about today. It is my pleasure to introduce the legendary Elisa Armstrong. Now, Elisa is just about finished her PhD. She's in the final writing up phase. She looks remarkably healthy for being in the final writing up phase. She is amazing, but she's doing that final hard yakka component. So it's really good, I think, to capture someone in the middle of that final stage, because often they're hiding and bunkered down in their room. So I'm letting her into the light so you can see what this final stage looks like as well. And can I say, this thesis that she's working on is an absolute ripper. It's brilliant. It's exciting. It's fabulous. And 20 years ago, theses like this were really common, and they're not anymore. So you know what? Let's be enthused. Let's step once more into a passion project, knowledge that matters personally as much as professionally and intellectually. Good morning, Elisa. You are on mute. Are you doing this intentionally to me? You are on mute.
How about now?
You are not on mute now. And that is, just so you know, dear people watching this vlog, that is probably a metaphor of our relationship. Good morning. Hi. Would you like to say anything to the university?
Would it be an inappropriate time to remind you that my name is said Elisa?
Yes, I know, but I always say it as Elisa because I can't say Elisa.
It's my stage name.
Which one is your stage name?
Well, Elisa seems to be my stage name.
Well, it is, but see, Elisa is just, it's not you.
Elisa.
Elisa. So I can't do it, mate. I can't do it. I can't do it. But do you want to say hi to everybody now that you're not on mute?
Hi, everybody. I'm not on mute.
This has been our relationship through the entirety of your candidature. Are you excited?
I am so excited and nervous, and my hands are really sweaty.
They mustn't be sweaty because it's a fantastic thing we're about to share with the universe. Okay, let's do this. Now, the first question is, I've talked a lot about passion so far and the passion of your project, right? So people want to know, what is this project, right? What is this passionate, exciting, enthusiastic research area? Go for it, superstar.
Women's experiences in the Dungeons and Dragons fandom. So it's fandom studies with a gendered lens, kind of looking at how women interact with and within the D&D fandom.
Now, so therefore, why that topic? Why that topic, my darling one? So why have you decided that was a thing you're going to do a PhD on?
Well, during my master's, I got to do a major project that I got to pick the topic of, and I did it on The Walking Dead. Not that I enjoy the TV show at all, but I really love zombies.
I love zombies too.
The first season is like very sexist, and I really enjoyed applying theory to things that I actually really loved and seemed really relevant to me.
Yes.
And so when it came to the idea of having to pick something big enough and interesting enough to dedicate essentially 3 years of my life to and potentially become an expert on. Dungeons and Dragons seemed to be the thing. I loved playing it. I liked reading about it. It was pretty topical as it was coming into like a big resurgence. So yeah.
Look, and that's brilliant. And we're going to talk about that master's in 1 second. But the idea that that's rare, that you have this passion for this area and the theory and the praxis and everything aligns, that used to be the way that cultural studies was done. 15, 20 years ago, that was the common way of doing things in the humanities and in cultural studies. And the idea that sort of what you're doing now, I mean, you are the only cultural studies student at Flinders University. How does that feel?
Scary and a little bit weird. Like,
right?
Why wouldn't there be more? Cultural studies seems sick. But I guess it kind of comes down to that idea that people, like I'm doing a PhD because I thought it would be really cool to be a doctor.
Yeah.
And I'm not really thinking big career picture, right? So I'm doing the PhD because I thought it would be cool. But I guess maybe the reason that you're seeing less passion projects is that everybody's so focused on employment and employability and the PhD is a stepping stone rather than a thing in itself, that it's less justifiable to do really interesting things and people think they have to do like serious things. Not that this isn't serious, this is very serious, it has real world implications for people, but you know, things that make them sound fancy.
Look, well said. We're going to come back to that in a second too. And an older person of your acquaintance, who happened to be a supervisor, wrote a statement, I think 20 years ago, that the trivial is political. The trivial is political. So if somebody thinks that something is a bit naff or a bit weird or a bit silly, I think there's always something important to learn about the society and the culture and the university about what is discarded as trash. But maybe that's just me.
No, I love trash.
Yeah, so do I. And of course, we both love zombies. That's why we that's how we sort of really aligned in the first place, wasn't it? You like zombies, I like zombies. It's amazing we didn't sort of do work on zombies though, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, zombies are, I don't know. I think it would have been very challenging to do a project on zombies during a pandemic, like emotionally challenging.
Ooh.
Because I've been reading zombie books and books that have kind of relevance to the pandemic since and during the pandemic, and it hits in a really different way. So that's been really interesting and something that maybe I should write about. I don't know.
I think you should. And also, of course, some of the work you and I have been doing, we wrote our first piece together around this, is the notion of darkness too. We've done a lot of work on, you know, dark culture, dark popular culture, and the book that we're currently writing with one Aidan Cornelius Bell is about the dark doctorate. So in some ways, maybe the zombies are morphing, as they do, into theories of darkness. But this leads to my second question, because another area that you've really been part of the trajectory in the story is you've come to the PhD from a master's, from a coursework master's with a dissertation. And that's an increasing pathway for students. Now, the tough question, and be as honest as you can because you nearly finished the PhD and you've done brilliantly, but do you think that coursework masters, and again, I'm looking straight at you, be honest with me, do you think that coursework masters prepared you to do a PhD? Oh, I'm already getting a shake, so talk to me, mate.
Nah, so I don't know whether it was because the master's degree was in something that I hadn't studied before. So my bachelor's, neither of them were in women's studies. So my master's was a real pivot. However, I don't feel that the master's really gave me a grounding in women's studies. There was a lot of, like, it was very interesting to learn about development studies, but I felt like I came out having maybe more of a qualification in development studies and how that's gendered than I did in kind of the foundations of kind of like feminist theory and kind of more of the other sides of women's studies. Also, I did a thesis in it, so it was only 18,000 words.
Yes.
But it was a really weird experience because,
wow,
I don't know, I got to choose this topic and that was cool, but I didn't have the same kind of supervisory relationship that I have now So I was very much writing in isolation. And I don't think it really prepared me for writing something bigger.
Yes.
It was kind of like writing a glorified essay that kind of ended up being a bit bloated. I don't think there was anything, I don't think there's anything wrong with it, but a lot of the master's coursework that I did just felt like bachelor's topics, but with like longer word limits. So there wasn't really that extension and challenging of ideas. So then you kind of jump into PhD, and it's a real leap in how autonomous you have to be, and that real drive to extend yourself rather than being fed kind of these very basic readings.
Yes.
I also don't feel that the style of writing that I did in my master's was of a PhD style, in the sense that, again, it felt like glorified, like long assignments.
Yes.
Rather than one of those pieces of work where you have your own voice and you start developing kind of that opinion and approach and kind of, does that make sense?
Look, it does. And the weird thing is, I'm only asking that question of you now because I've always believed passionately in the coursework master's degree. I've done 3 of them, and I did a research master's, and I've just finished a coursework master's like literally 3 weeks ago. And I was horrified, mate. I was horrified at the lack of reading, the short assignments, and the inverted commas dissertation was, as you've stated brilliantly there, a glorified essay. So as Dean of Graduate Research, that frightened me a lot, because I've always believed passionately in the coursework masters as, really prepares you for a PhD. And having been through my own coursework masters, there is actually no relationship between those qualifications at all. Now, I think you had a better history and heritage than I did, but it's interesting. I didn't know how you would answer that question. What would you recommend to people that are making that transition themselves, Elisa, mate?
From master's to PhD?
Yeah, so in other words, they're doing the coursework, they've done dissertation. Is there anything that you could help them with in the gap between the 2 quals that they could do to help themselves?
Read.
Yeah.
Read. So much reading. Like, and be maybe a little bit weird with what you read. Like, follow those weird pathways. Because I feel like in masters and in coursework generally, you kind of get this very like narrow perspective given to you, potentially. Like, it can be a bit political in what you are and aren't shown in your readings. But like, if something is interesting, don't be afraid to read something that's got less citations. Woo! Because your work has less citations and it can still be very valuable. Like, I don't know, just read.
You are the wisest of wise people, oh Yoda. No, it's funny. I haven't really learned that lesson late. And I've always sort of read in a very structured way. In this current job, when I haven't had a lot of time, I've read widely, and maybe not always reading for the article, just reading widely. Oh, that's new. That looks interesting. And that's freshened up my entire academic career. But you got there some decades ahead of me. Now let's talk about the surprise and the surprises in your doctorate. And these surprises emerged very, very early. And that was through your capacity to gather data through your survey. Now everyone just hang on to yourself, right? Hang on to yourself. I'm going to ask the question, tell us about your survey and what happened.
So I posted my survey to Facebook, as I had ethics approval to do so, blah, blah, blah. I posted it, I think it was like on a Friday, like early afternoon. Yeah. And then I went to work. Yeah. And I was kind of just periodically checking how many replies I had, because I was getting more than I thought. I was like, well, if I get like 100 responses, that'll be pretty good. I should be able to get a good spread of kind of different opinions from that. But before I'd even finished a couple of hours at work, I had hundreds of responses. And so I ended up only having my survey open for 17 days before I capitulated and closed it, which was a good idea. And I should have listened to my supervisor and closed it sooner. Yeah. But I ended up, so I had 3 surveys.
Yes.
So I had a player survey, a non-player survey, and then I had a survey where I asked people about character builds they had, because I thought it would be interesting. So for the non-player survey, I got 6,294 non-players.
6,000 non-players. I mean, that's unheard of. So people that are not hugely interested in the topic, but they're going to take some time, 6,000 of them, and they're going to answer your survey. Unheard of. Please continue.
Bizarre. And I got 31,098 different character builds. Well, that's the amount of responses I got. I actually ended up with like a lot more builds than that, because some people filled in like 10. Like, it was crazy. And then for my player survey, which is kind of like the core of what I needed to get done, I got 49,393 players responding, which is wild, especially because it wasn't a particularly short survey.
No.
There was like 25, 26 questions on there. I mean, some of those are demographics, so they're like click box, but there was a lot of like long answer response, like things. Because I thought, if only a few people do it, I want to get as much data from those few people as possible. But people took a significant chunk of time to fill out my survey, and they spread it, which was cool. I had that snowball recruiting without having to do anything. So I didn't have to ask people to share it. I found that people were just sharing it of their own accord, which was really awesome.
Look, this is unbelievable, right? So we're going to drill down a little bit here. So, Elisa, what I find amazing in this conversation is this is the passion project, right? Because your passion in this remarkable, weird, wonderful topic is shared by other people to a 27,000th millionth degree, right? So, in other words, you love it, and a stack of people who also love it went with you on this journey. And, that's remarkable. We'll get to that in a second. But for me, it's always the people, you got such a great response from the non-players.
Yeah.
And I will never really grasp why that happened, except it did appear, because I was watching it during that weekend. It was progressing like a rolling train. It was remarkable. And certainly I shared it, and I know, because obviously I've, supervised 100 plus students just looking at popular culture, and I think they all were terribly interested in it, so they filled it in, and then they sent it on, and it snowballed and snowballed and snowballed. I've never seen a cascade like this. So this is a tremendous story. There's a whole series of methodological papers that you're going to be writing about this. But then the next question is, okay, this great thing has happened, but what are the consequences to a thesis when you've got this amount of information?
Well, it's incredibly validating from a personal perspective, because you're kind of screaming about this topic that you think is really important, and to have almost 50,000 other players and whatever say, yeah, we're interested in this, we think this is important, we want to talk about it, is incredibly validating, especially for a passion project that a lot of people have been quite negative about to my face. Like, this kind of showed them. So you kind of like buoyed up and you're like, woo! And then you start to read the results, and it's incredibly, incredibly overwhelming. There is so much there. There are so many avenues that I could follow, and
yes,
you just kind of get paralyzed and overwhelmed. It's like, where am I supposed to go with this? And how do I do it justice?
Yes.
So I have spent a lot of time just being like, what do I do? And how do I go about it? Because originally I was going to stick it all in like in vivo.
Yep.
And SPSS, and those would be my kind of two main tools.
Yeah.
I got a new computer to handle this because it killed my old computer. I'm not
yes. Your data set killed the computer.
Yeah, it did.
It's zombie computer. Yep.
Poor baby.
Poor baby.
So I got a new computer, and even with new computer, I'm watching SPSS. It thinks every time you get it to do anything, you see applying to 10,000, 20,000, 30,000. So that was like overwhelming, because I was obsessively saving in case I lost stuff, and I did occasionally lose stuff because the program just crashed.
Yes.
But in Vivo, I couldn't get to work at all.
No.
Because as good a tool as it is, it's not meant to analyze like 26 long text responses from 50,000 people. When you start thinking about the sheer number of data points you've got there, and coding them,
Yeah.
it just crashed. And that led to a lot of trouble as I tried to pivot from what was my original plan.
Yes.
But
Good use of the word pivot there, by the way, and noted.
But I ended up in Excel,
Yep.
and I think that was really interesting because I felt that I had to use fancy software that academics use. And I mean, academics do use Excel, but everybody uses Excel. But it was just interesting to have to kind of think about, well, just because something is a fancy tool doesn't mean it's going to be the best tool for the job.
Huge moment.
Yeah.
Huge moment. And also Excel is many things. Excel is actually quite a powerful bit of kit. It's just that most of us use it in a very, very basic form most of the time. We underuse Excel, what it can do, I think.
Yeah. But I've got a couple of thousand left to go because I realized I skipped a question, but I am reading every single response.
Yes.
And that has been a point of conflict with a lot of people that I've spoken to who are like, well, of course you're overwhelmed. Why are you reading every single one? Why don't you just do a little bit of a sample or I don't know, no, people have taken time. I'm going to take the time to read it. And what if I miss something? What if someone has a really important story that they've taken the time to tell that might have been very difficult, because there are some difficult topics that I covered in the survey. How is that doing them justice if I can't take in the 3 years that I have? Well, I mean, there was less than that by the time I finished, but to read it and really consider it and put it as part of the project.
I'm so glad you said that. I mean, that's why you and I get on. You and I have a lot of barbs between us. We famously, it is a very interesting generational war between you and I, but we do actually have a lot in common, and we are actually pretty good mates. And one of the things we have in common, of which there are many, I won't share our secret with too many others, I promise, is that we value the voices and the views of others desperately and passionately. And that's what you and I believe in. We believe in cherishing the stories that people share with us. And simply what happened with us and with your thesis is that thousands of people shared their life stories and passions and hopes and disappointments in great depth. So as I've said to Elisa, for the last 2.5 years, you haven't just got a data set for a PhD, you've got a data set for life. There is a life's work going to be engaging with this material. It is so rich. But therefore, the question is, and this sort of, I'm leading you into your conclusion, just so you know, there is a method to my madness today, because so often high degree students complain that they just can't get enough people responding to their survey. You see it endlessly on Facebook, on Twitter, on LinkedIn. People are going and going again and just trying to crawl out a final few people to respond to their survey. Now, that wasn't you. What did you do that was so right?
I mean, I think my choice of topic has a lot to answer for. I think there are obviously going to be things that it's harder to get people to want to share about. But something that I think is integral to kind of the identity of fans and fandom is people want to talk about it.
Yeah.
I want to info dump on you about this new thing that I've learned or this new hobby that I have and this passion. And so I guess it tapped into that kind of desire to go, yeah, no, I love D&D and here's why.
Boom. We've lost sound again. No, I've lost you again. Hang in there.
How about now?
I've got you now. Isn't this amazing? It's the zombies.
It's the ghosts.
Ghosts, mate. Ghosts of the machine. Love that. So yes, passion project. Please continue.
Yep. The timing. I think the timing of my project is really spot on in the fact that Dungeons and Dragons is having a massive resurgence. It has for a few years now.
Yes.
And a lot of that resurgence is taking place on social media. So there's the existing kind of structures in place for it to be
clever.
So a lot of fandom is organised around Facebook groups and Discords. And I found that in my results, people were telling me where they saw my survey. And people were like, I saw it on a dice collecting page, or I saw it in a fandom for a Discord for Critical Role fans. So there is that kind of structure to reach the target audience and participate.
Beautiful.
Without me having to kind of invent it. I made my post shareable. I included a graphic. I thought that was kind of important because, you know, if you only do a text post, people kind of have a tendency to flick past. Like I will too, and I'll miss bits. I see other people's research projects, and a lot of the time I'm not eligible, so I can't do them. But you know, you see them and it's a block of text, and then it's a link to something like Qualtrics or whatever it's called.
Yeah.
And I chose SurveyMonkey, which is no longer called SurveyMonkey, but I felt that people would find SurveyMonkey more approachable because people are used to using SurveyMonkey. It's just a little bit more normal. Yeah. Whereas Qualtrics, I think of it as something for serious, like, oh, okay, well, this is like going to take forever, or this is going to ask really like, I don't know, I think of it as something that people use for like psych studies. Yeah. Whereas I felt SurveyMonkey is a little bit more approachable.
Yeah, you are a great communication studies scholar, can I say, because what you've just done there is brilliant, because actually research is not about you. Mm. Research is about the people that you want to reach, and you are interested in them. You're not interested in yourself. You know what you think. So therefore, when you're thinking about a platform, when you're thinking about questions, when you're thinking about ethics, it is about the people you are researching with dignity and integrity and accountability and hope, and their literacies, not yours.
It's almost an exercise in marketing, because you are marketing your research to them, and you've got to justify to them why they should want to participate. Because at the end of the day, nobody owes you anything. Like, they're going to go whether they want to be involved and whether they think it has value and whether they think it's worth their time. And part of that, I think, is making sure, and this is something that I didn't do initially, but talking about how you're going to feed that research back into the community. Because at the end of the day, they're giving you something. So what are you going to give back? And if you're only going to publish or share at like an obscure academic level or hidden behind an expensive paywall, how are they benefiting? Like, I had a lot of requests for people. They're like, hey, when you finish this, could you please share what you found back in this group? Can you make some infographics? You know, will I be able to get this in a book? So something that I've had to consider throughout the project, and I discussed quite heavily in my methodology, is how I'm going to feed back that value. And I think if people maybe did that when they are asking people to fill out their survey, maybe there's kind of a bit more of an encouragement to participate.
You are a mythical human being. I am so proud of you. I'm quite emotional. I don't know if you're emotional. I'm very emotional. Like, you know, at this point, you know, we've always had, you and I have had this sort of this Sith master and apprentice relationship. We've joked about it a lot, but in many ways, it's actually an ideal model for our relationship in so many ways. And I'm so proud of you. I can't imagine having a PhD student who would make me prouder than the answer you just gave me. I'm so emotional about it. It's unbelievable. And it's so many things to say about it, but also can I say another thing that Elisa did incredibly well, and she's just starting this, but she's done it fantastically, is she's worked with open access journals that are often called platinum open access journals, that there's no cost for the person that's submitting the article and there's no cost for the people reading it. So in other words, it's zero cost both ways, platinum open access. And even as a young PhD student, she's worked with professionalism and care with these very special academic journals, noting that the academics that are running them are doing it out of, you know, passion project themselves. They're doing it to contribute to knowledge. And Elisa's been so respectful and kind and decent with them that she's built these other partnerships with the journals that will allow her to disseminate back for free to those communities. And that's quite a powerful thing to have done too, my queen.
I feel very lucky to have been kind of guided and shown that direction rather than being forced down that kind of pathway of, publish or perish, and you know what journal matters, like, and if it's not like fancy enough, then what's the point? But I think the approach is very much what I want people to be able to read what I've written. I want to share, so I've got to do that through open access and support kind of the academic community supporting each other. I don't know.
We love you for that. And also, how great has the feedback been for your first couple of articles? I mean, people are just stunned. It's picking up a high number of citations, and the feedback you're getting is just phenomenal.
I get emails sometimes that say, somebody has seen your like thingy in academia search. And I'm like, I've cited myself in my PhD, which sounds really, really wanky, but it felt quite good.
Yeah. Well, can I say, Elisa has now become the self-citer of all time, right? Now, I never used to self-cite. All my PhD students, you'd never self-cite because, like, you know, if the only people that are going to cite yourself, well, then you got problems, girlfriend. But can I say, you've now constructed this almost this matrix of knowledge whereby, and of course you have to do this now with all the attention on inverted commas self-plagiarism, you have to be very clear. I've worked on this project, that project is here, citation, I've worked on this project is here, and the next stage builds from these projects, join me on this journey. So you've handled that brilliantly. Now, let's start to reach the end of this conversation. Let's see if I can just not cry in the final little bit of this conversation. Now, hard question, this one. I've never asked you. I've waited 2.5 years that we've been together as a family to ask you this question. So, Elisa darling, why did you start a PhD? And why are you finishing one? And are those reasons different?
Okay, so I started, ever since I heard of what a PhD is, and I think I must have been at uni when I started to learn about PhDs, beyond kind of that perception on TV of like scientist PhDs. That's kind of all I knew, like doctors and astrophysics and all of that kind of thing. I just thought it would be really cool to be an expert on something, like contributing to like knowledge. And I kind of fantasized a little bit about the idea of someone stumbling upon something that I've written and getting excited about the topic the way I get excited when I stumble upon research articles that are about weird things. Like, I want to be part of someone being like, oh, that's interesting. So it's kind of like passing on that kind of like hunger for knowledge. So I just wanted to do it because I wanted to learn as much as possible about something and be called doctor. Which is possibly not as deep as some other people's reasons, but still valid, I think.
Still valid, girlfriend, still valid.
But I think the reason that I'm going to finish it has probably evolved a little bit, because I have thought about walking away. There have been moments where I've been like, screw this is too hard. Or like, you know, you have those moments when you're like, where am I even going to get? I should just go back to retail. Like, I was happy there. You're not happy in retail. Like,
can I say, and remember, about once every second meeting, so once every 2 weeks, you go, maybe I should go back to retail. You start our weekly meetings with, maybe I should go back to retail. So just putting that as a footnote for punters. Please continue, mate.
But I love my thesis as much as I hate my thesis.
Yes.
I want to see it finished. I want to have it done. Like, leaving it incomplete, I think, would haunt me for the rest of my existence, and possibly, you know, for a few existences afterwards.
Well, that's right. This will be in your genetic matrix, and you'll pass it on through the generations. No, that's right. This is a seismic disappointment, this one, yes.
And also, like, again, I've said it, but kind of an obligation to finish. I felt like a responsibility to finish, because if I didn't finish, what would happen to all of the data I collected? Like,
wow,
that seemed unfathomable to me, that it would end up, you know, deleted, or I don't know, just tucked away in the corner of my Dropbox, and none of those voices would get out, and all those people that took all that time, like, that would really suck. So
yeah, it would.
I like, when I get really down and I'm like, ugh, I just take a little bit of time to read some of the responses and, you know, get fired up about some of the really nasty shit that I get to write about. Like, it can get really depressing, but I kind of don't let that stop me and go into that funk. I go, people need to know that this is happening. Because if I'm surprised by some of this stuff, and I'm a member of the community and I've faced a lot of sexism and stuff,
yeah,
if I'm surprised about some of the stuff that's happening, then, you know, there's going to be a lot of people who are going to be very surprised. And, you know, this is going to prompt change, I think. So there's that kind of responsibility and hope.
You are wonderful. I think that's very, very honest too, brutalizingly honest, and very, very powerful. And, you know, you have sustained, you have persisted. And that in and of itself, noting that for a lot of your candidature, you were not on scholarship, you were in work, and the thesis was around family and around life and all these other things, and you persisted. So
Yeah.
it's a remarkable story.
Thank you.
Last question, and then we finish our party. You've done brilliantly. Well done, you.
I haven't sworn. I haven't said any bad words.
Yeah, you have sworn, just so you know. You have sworn. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. It's fine. I'll do a warning. We'll pretend we're sort of down with the young people and stuff, and I'll do a warning on the YouTube channel. This one's a bit risque.
Explicit. Anyway, yeah, sorry.
Yeah, so please continue. Last question. Now, a lot of people watch this wonderful YouTube channel who are thinking of doing a PhD. Probably about a third of our viewers are people that are gonna or are thinking of doing a PhD. So what would you say to these students around the world who are deciding, do I add myself to a supervisor's project? So the supervisor has advertised these projects and I go to those projects, or do I continue and create a passion project that's important to me personally and professionally and intellectually? What would you recommend to those people, my love?
I would say go for something that matters to you, and fine if jumping onto somebody else's project and they're studying something that really hits a chord with you, like that's fine, like that's not an issue, but you should definitely do something that fuels you. The only other PhD student I knew before I started my PhD, he jumped onto a supervisor's project because he wasn't sure what he wanted to do, and he hated it, and he was miserable. And I saw this really amazing person kind of crumble in confidence, and it was really depressing. I don't know how I still ended up doing a PhD actually, but and he ended up trying to downgrade it so he would at least leave with a master's. But he hadn't, like, they couldn't pull it together, and he ended up pulling the plug, and he'd spent like 2 years working on someone else's project, something he wasn't interested in, couldn't really pull it together, and he left with nothing. And he was an incredibly hardworking student. Like, he'd done honours, he was an HD student all the way through, and the project broke him. He's not in academia anymore. He can't do it. And that, I think, is a good example of why, because when shit gets tough,
yeah,
like what is going to make you sit at your computer or, you know, read something else? And if it's not passion, like, or interest or a strong emotional connection, then I think there's the potential for you to struggle. Because at the end of the day, it's a job. And if you commit to a 3-year job in something that you do not care about at all, who sticks in a job for 3 years that makes them miserable? Like, that doesn't work. Especially if you're not on a scholarship and you're essentially working a bunch of hours so that you can work a bunch of hours. Like,
huge point.
Miserable. But I think also you have to tread really carefully with studying something that you are emotionally, politically, or personally embedded in, because it will change your relationship with the topic and the community.
Yes.
You can go from being a participant to being an outsider, or kind of standing on this weird fence that in fandom studies they call like being an ACCA fan, which is just like ACCA fandom. There's a lot of like hybrid word. What do they call smudge words.
Yeah, well, the hybrid words are, I mean, an ACCA fan was always an embarrassment, right? That phrase was always an embarrassment.
There's just so many of them. Like, if you can put fan in front of something, like, people do it, and it drives me nuts. But anyway,
yes.
So be really aware of how your positioning will be altered.
Huge.
Because especially if the community you're studying is one that you want to continue to be a part of, and if what you're publishing might not be the most positive or flattering, because at the end of the day, you've got to be honest.
Yes.
Like, can you be honest about the community or the topic that you're writing about? Like, examining your motivations for writing it, because if you're writing it because you want to share how amazing something is without being willing to shed light on the shit parts, that's not proper research.
No.
You've got to acknowledge your biases and also challenge the preconceived ideas, because I had some ideas about what was going to come up in this research. Like, I was fairly sure that I was going to be able to write some really mean shit about Critical Role.
Yeah.
But it's not what I thought it was.
No.
And that's awesome. But I am far enough back from it that I can be objective about that.
Yeah.
But if you're expecting to write your PhD about one thing because of your relationship with the community, and that isn't the way it's going, you have to be able and willing to kind of shift and stay safe.
Now, wow. So you are a different human being than the one I met 2.5 years ago. But for everyone watching this, can you see why we focus so much attention in research training on epistemology, ontology, and methodology and their relationship? And if you need to see why we focus on that relationship, Elisa's answer in the last 5 minutes captures it magnificently. So all I want to say to you, you rat bag, is how much I absolutely adore you. You've brought faith and light and so much laughter into my life. You are amazing.
Thank you. Thank you. I feel very lucky to be your student.
We've had a ball, you and I. We've had
crazy.
It's been crazy. We've had a ball, and it's so rare these days that a popular culture supervisor and a popular culture student get together and have a blast for 2.5, 3 years and produce some absolutely amazing research. And again, Elisa's got this once in a lifetime data set. It has been a privilege to be your supervisor and see in popular cultural studies that data set live and breathe and be triumphant. So you are legendary, my darling, and you've got a great career in front of you. Don't ever doubt that for 1 minute. This passion project will create a passion career.
Oh, I like that.
I think it's also true.
Yeah, but I want a t-shirt.
Okay, I'll organise that t-shirt for you the day you finish your thesis.
Deal.
No pressure. So we wish you, and how fantastic is she? I just love this woman. And remember her name, Elisa, or Elisa, as she likes to say, but I mean, I can't say that because that just doesn't sound right to me. You remain Elisa Armstrong, legendary. So we wish you, and I wish you forever, my darling, but we wish you love, light, and peace. Elisa and Elisa and Tara. Out.
Woo! Oh, my arms are we did it! It's alive!
Yeah. How great was that? Are you happy with that?
Yeah.
I think you were brilliant.
I was hella smart.
You were hella smart, mate. You were hella smart. Look at this bloody mug. I'm going to get my green mug now. Look, see, who's got the bigger mug? Have I got the bigger mug?
Is yours full of vodka, though?
No, it's full of hot water. Isn't that just devastating?
Mine's full of cold water. I just wanted to look fancier than drinking out of a pump bottle.
Oh, that's very nice. Dal, you realise, #no pressure, you realise we just wrote your conclusion for you, don't you?
Oh, shit, we did.
So if you just transcribed the last 44 minutes, that's your conclusion.
Nice. Okay, yeah, I've got notes because I obviously didn't want to come in without any thinkings.
Any thinkings? Yeah. Yes, because you need the thinkings and the learnings and stuff.
Can't do on the fly. I can't think on the fly.
No, you were brilliant. Are you comfortable though? So are you comfortable with how that progressed?
Yeah, it was awesome.
I thought it was awesome. You were very loquacious.
Thanks. Is that a fruit?
Yeah, look, it's very, very luscious fruit.